Me and my family went to the county fair this past weekend, which can only mean one thing. It's September. And every September, I get so excited. I love the fall. I love jeans and hoodies and campfires. I love the whole thing. But I also have this realization that 9 months of the year have already passed by. That doesn't seem possible. Can you relate to that? Let me take you back in time to the beginning of this year, December 31st, 2020. Can you remember that? We were all so excited to get out of whatever that year was that seems to still be lingering in some ways. And we do what we did a lot of years. We look forward to this next year and think things are going to be different. I am going to make some resolutions. Did you make any resolutions on that night? Make plans for how things could be different in this next year? All that we learned in 2020 and commit to doing that? I did. And if I'm honest, and I look back over this last year, I failed on all of them. I didn't bring any of them into what I would hoped it would be. What causes that? Why is it that resolutions fall off? Scientists tell me that by the second Tuesday in February, most resolutions have been dropped by the wayside. Well, if you can relate to that, like I can relate to that, stay tuned. Let's talk about it. It's not just resolutions that fall off. When I was a kid, I was a pastor's son. I spent a lot of time in church and youth groups, and I loved it. Youth group was a lot of fun to me. They would play games and allow us to be silly, and I got a chance to hang out with my friends with some really cool adults that were just great people. They would also organize these things called retreats. Have you ever been to a retreat? Retreats are wonderful things when you're a high school or junior high kid. You get away from home, away from mom and dad, with your friends for a weekend in the same place, eating good food, playing games, having just this great community feeling. They would also do these parts of the weekend that were less exciting to me, but equally important. This times of worship service, and they would have a theme for the week and these dynamic speakers that would come in and the bands that would come and play. And usually toward the end of the weekend, if you've been to a retreat, you know what I'm talking about. They'll have this part where they have a call night, a come to Jesus moment. They play the music soft after the pastor has given this heartfelt invitation to give your life to Christ. I knew at that moment that I was a church person. And I would have told you I was a Christian at that time, but I also knew that my actions and my words and my deeds did not line up with what Jesus would have me to do. So by the 8th verse of Just As I Am, and a lot of my friends had already stood up or gone forward, I said, this time it's going to be different. I am going to be different. Monday when I go back to school, I'm going to do what Jesus wants me to do. So I went forward with my friends. And I said the prayers. I repeated after the pastor. And I got excited. And I remember sitting in the circle with my friends saying, we're going to be different this time. We're going to do this Jesus thing right. And then Monday happened. Have you ever had Monday happen? Oh, I go into school and it's crazy. It's like snap, back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity, pulling me back into my old patterns, my old ways. What causes that? Jesus talks about it. Listen to this. A farmer went out to sow a seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell in rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow, but when the sun came up, the plants were scorched and they withered because they had no root. See, that retreat atmosphere was perfect, it seemed to me. I often thought to myself, if I can just live in this fertile soil of a retreat feel, I could do this Jesus thing. I had shallow soil that wanted to receive the seed. I wanted at that moment to do what Jesus wanted me to do. But then the sun came up on Monday. Peer pressure kicked up. My own fears and insecurities and ego and wanting to have significance and be liked by others kicked up. Teasing from friends about this Jesus thing kicked up. And I found myself scorched. I found myself walking through the halls no different than what I was before the retreat. Can you relate to that? Have you had moments where you've so wanted to be different, but to fall short? I think rocky soil is the cause of a lot of wounds. Last week I got a message from someone that reminded me about how our soil interacts with others when we're in those places. She was responding to the hard soil video that we had made last week, and here's what she said. I was just watching your post from yesterday. It's funny because after all these years, do you know what I remember about you? How you treated me in high school. There was one day specifically that you called me a name I'm embarrassed to even say in the hall at school in front of all of your friends. So you're right when saying that life makes people hard. People will always remember how they were treated, even if it was 20 years ago. I don't hold any grudges, and I'm glad to see you're doing well. My shallow, rocky soil impacted her, wounded her, damaged her. And after I got that message, I wondered, how many people did I leave in my wake because I had shallow soil? Because I was a convert and not a disciple of Jesus? Because it was more important to me what others thought of me than what Jesus thought of me? I didn't love out of the way He loved. I was more concerned about my image and what I could get out of things. I took advantage of people. It was hard to think about the effects of rocky soil. I don't think I'm alone in that, though. That's a big rock. Our lives are filled with big rocks that get in the way of the roots of what Jesus wants to do in our lives. So what do we do? What do we do if we have rocky soil? Let's go back to the garden for a moment. When we were preparing the soil for our garden, the first thing we had to do was identify where the rocks were and start taking them out. We had to take an inventory of our ground. We have to do the same thing as people. How often do you take an inventory of your life, your actions, your attitudes, your behaviors, the traditions that you believe, the principles that guide you, where they come from, why you are the way that you are? Scripture tells us the importance of this, how easy it is to be deceived. If you haven't read Colossians 2, go read Colossians 2. And Paul talks about don't be deceived by fine-sounding arguments. Don't be held captive by the basic principles of this world, man-made traditions. I didn't do that very well in most of my life. Only in the last 7 to 8 years have I gotten into really starting to ask hard questions about what makes me me and why do I believe what I believe. It's what causes the rocks to become identified. Understanding what needs to go out of the soil. Have you done that? Have you spent time asking yourself why you believe what you believe? Crew up. Scripture tells us that we're made to be in community together, that the church is actually not just to advance God's kingdom, but to do that inside the body too, to spur one another on, as it says in Hebrews, to encourage one another. Do you have people in your life that will tell you when you got broccoli in your teeth in loving ways, not out of spite or because they don't like you, but because they love you? It's humbling to think about, isn't it, what we're capable of? Are you aware what you're capable of? It reminds me every day of how much I need Jesus, more today than I did yesterday, because I know to a degree what I'm capable of. I need deeper roots. We need deeper roots. This world that is unbelieving needs to see disciples of Jesus with deeper roots loving. How is your soil today? And how are you tending it? If we are ever going to have a garden, we have to tend our soil. Have fun picking the rocks. I'll see you next time.